Welcome to Chronicles and Legends. Please hit that subscribe and let us know where in the world are you tuning in from. Let's get started. Fenrir, the great dwarf of Norse mythology. A saga of destiny, strength, betrayal, defiance, and the Vikings bombed with wolves. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Beast, Fenrir's Awakening. In the frostbitten wilderness of Norse myth, beneath skies dark with storm and prophecy, a creature was born whose name would echo through the ages. Fenrir, the great wolf fated to devour the gods. Born in the desolate land of Jotunheim, realm of the giants, Fenrir was no ordinary beast. His father was Loki, the cunning shape-shifter and trickster god, and his mother was Angrboda, a fearsome giantess from the edges of the world. Together, they birthed a trio of terrifying children: Fenrir, Jormungandr, the world-encircling serpent, and Hel, the somber queen of the dead. From the very moment of his birth, Fenrir was steeped in mystery and dread. The Norns, weavers of fate, had already seen what was to come: the great wolf's destiny to bring ruin upon the gods in the final cataclysm known as Ragnarok. Whispers of this vision found their way to Odin, the All-Father, who was obsessed with foreseeing and controlling destiny itself. Fearing the havoc Loki's offspring might bring, Odin summoned the three monstrous children to Asgard, the divine realm of the gods. Hel was banished to rule over the dead in the underworld. Jormungandr was cast into the ocean to slumber beneath the waves until the end of days. But Fenrir, he was different. The gods chose to keep the wolf close, hoping to monitor and tame him. They raised him among them, watching as he grew, not just in size, but in strength, cunning, and fury. Day by day, his form swelled, his presence more imposing, his hunger more insatiable. Soon, even the bravest gods trembled in his shadow. Only Tyr, the god of war and law, dared approach him with familiarity, knowing they could not allow Fenrir to roam free forever. The gods devised a plan to restrain him, but iron chains shattered under his jaws, and thick rope snapped like dry twine. None could contain the power he was growing into. In desperation, Odin turned to the dwarves, master smiths who lived deep beneath the earth and shaped the impossible. To them, he made a request: craft a binding unlike any before. And so, the dwarves forged Gleipnir, a ribbon-thin chain made from 6 impossible ingredients: the sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, the roots of mountains, a bear's sinews, a fish's breath, and the spittle of a bird, delicate to the eye, but unbreakable by any force of man or god. When the gods brought Gleipnir to Fenrir, they cloaked their intent in games and riddles. They claimed it was a test, a challenge of strength for the mighty wolf. But Fenrir was not so easily deceived. Suspicion burned in his eyes, and he growled a warning. He would only submit to the trial if one of the gods placed their hand in his jaws. As a token of trust, silence fell. The gods looked to one another, unsure, unwilling. Only Tyr, bound by duty and honor, stepped forward. With solemn resolve, he placed his hand between the great wolf's teeth. Fenrir accepted the test. The gods wound Gleipnir around his limbs and body. At first, Fenrir strained, confident in his power, but the chain held. He twisted and lunged, muscles bulging and teeth gnashing, but the fetter did not yield. In that moment, he understood. He had been betrayed. With a roar that shook the heavens, Fenrir clamped down on Tyr's arm, severing it at the wrist. The god did not cry out. He had known the price of his loyalty, and he paid it in full. The gods fastened the bound wolf to a slab of stone deep in the wilderness. They drove a sword between his jaws to muffle his howls, forcing his mouth open so he could not bite nor speak. There he lay, bound in silence, rage burning in his eyes, waiting. For it was foretold that one day Fenrir would break free. The day the sky splits and fire rains from the heavens. The day of Ragnarok. And when that day comes, the wolf will run again. Chapter 2. The Breaking of Chains, Fenrir and the Doom of the Gods. For ages untold, Fenrir lay bound beneath the roots of the world, trapped by the gods who feared what he might become. Chained to the stone Joel, with the unbreakable ribbon Gleipnir tightening at every struggle, and a blade jammed between his jaws to silence his cries, the great wolf remained imprisoned, but not defeated. Time passed. Empires of men rose and fell, the stars shifted across the sky, yet in the shadowed corners of the cosmos, the old prophecies whispered ever louder. The gods of Asgard celebrated their dominion. They believed chaos had been subdued, that fate had been tricked. But fate is not a thread that can be untangled. It is a storm waiting to break, and deep in the silence of his suffering, Fenrir waited. Not asleep, not forgotten, but watching and growing. The pain of betrayal burned in him on a second heart. He had trusted the gods, he had honored their challenge, and they had gagged him with steel and lies. But wolves do not forget, nor do they forgive. Then the signs began to appear, the omens of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. The earth trembled with unnatural quakes, the skies were streaked with fire, the branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree, groaned under the weight of impending doom, and from his prison, Fenrir stirred. Far to the east, Jormungandr, Fenrir's brother, writhed in the sea, his coils shaking the oceans. In the realm of the dead, Hel gathered her armies, and Loki, their father, once bound by the gods, broke free from his torment, ready to lead the charge against his former kin. But it was Fenrir the gods feared most. For when the bonds of fate shattered, he would not rise as a beast, he would rise as a force of reckoning. When the Jollahorn sounded, blown by Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, it echoed through every realm. It was the call to war, the final awakening, and with that echo, the time of waiting ended. Gleipnir, the impossible chain forged from things that do not exist, snapped like brittle thread. The rocks that anchored Fenrir shattered like glass, and the sword that had silenced his howl for eons fell from his maw, clattering uselessly to the ground. The wolf stood, now massive beyond comprehension. Fenrir's body stretched across the horizon, his fur bristled like spears, his breath a wave of burning mist, his eyes twin suns of fury. With every step, the earth cracked, with every growl, the skies recoiled, the gods gathered their strength. Odin atop his eight-legged steed, spear in hand, Thor wielding Mjolnir, Freyr, Heimdall, Tyr, all ready to face the chaos they once chained. But deep in their hearts, they knew the reckoning they had feared was now upon them. The one they tried to silence had come to speak. Fenrir did not come for battle, he came for justice. In the clash that followed, the skies split in half, fire rained from above, an ocean swallowed the land. Fenrir charged with unrelenting fury towards Odin, the Allfather himself, the architect of his imprisonment. Odin met the beast without flinching. His spear pierced the wolf's flank, but Fenrir was unstoppable. With a single lunge, he clamped his jaws around the god of gods, and swallowed him whole. Silence fell, not of peace, but of devastation. The gods reeled in horror, but they knew this had been written. Destiny was simply turning its final page. But Fenrir's vengeance would not go unanswered. From the bloodied field rose Vidar, son of Odin, the silent avenger, wearing a magical boot crafted through the ages, built to endure this moment alone. He pressed his foot upon the wolf's jaw. With divine strength, he drove his sword into Fenrir's heart. The wolf staggered, not with fear, not with regret, but with the cold acceptance of fate fulfilled. As his breath slowed and his form faltered, Fenrir's gaze did not turn to the gods, but toward the sky, toward the stars beyond the gods' reach, toward the freedom that had always been denied him. The ground beneath them burned, the heavens wept fire, and the old world began to die. But this was not the end. It was the beginning of something new. Chapter 3. Legacy of the Wolf, Fenrir's eternal echo. As the firestorms of Ragnarok faded into ashes, and the realms trembled on the edge of oblivion, silence returned to the 9 worlds. The gods had fallen, the old order had been shattered. But the death of Fenrir was not the end of his story, it was the beginning of his legacy. Though his body lay broken, Fenrir's bloodline endured. From the shadows rose his sons, Skoll and Hati, to spectral wolves born not of rage, but of purpose. From their first breath, they had chased the great celestial lights, Skoll after the sun, Hati after the moon, relentless in their pursuit. It was said they would only succeed when the end drew near, and they did. During Ragnarok, the 2 wolves caught their prey, devouring the sun and moon in their jaws. The sky turned black, stars vanished, the heavens wept. But this was no act of cruelty, it was an act of balance. The devouring of light cleared the way for a new dawn in Norse belief. The end was never truly the end. Ragnarok was not just destruction, it was renewal. From the ashes of gods and monsters, a new world would rise, greener, gentler, untouched by the scars of the past. And in this new world, the echoes of Fenrir's story would still howl through the wind, not as a warning, but as a reminder. Gods had feared Fenrir, but because he was evil, but because he was uncontrollable, a symbol of wild fate, of nature unbound by divine law. He was a creature destined not to kneel, but to rise, to challenge, to tear down what no longer served the world. He was cast as the villain in tales told by the victors, yet his defiance held meaning deeper than any battle. Fenrir was never chaos for chaos's sake. He was resistance incarnate, resistance against prophecy, against chains, against the cruelty of those who claim to know better. Many skalds and thinkers have reflected on Fenrir's role in the cycle of time. Some see him as a force of entropy, the unraveling of structure. Others view him as a necessary storm that clears the way for rebirth. But perhaps, above all, Fenrir represents a truth too often ignored. That freedom has a price, that destiny, even when carved into stone, is not absolute. That sometimes, the monster we fear is just the mirror we avoid. In Viking culture, wolves were more than beasts. They were totems, both feared and revered. Warriors known as the Ulfhednadond, wolf skins, channeling their savagery into battle. To the Vikings, wolves embodied loyalty, ferocity, and the courage to run headfirst into the storm. Fenrir was the greatest of them all, the wolf that even the gods could not tame. And perhaps it was not Fenrir who failed to live up to the gods' expectations, but the gods who failed to understand him. In the starlit quiet of the post-Ragnarok world, where new life stirred in the grass and fresh rivers cut through ruined lands, the spirit of Fenrir lived on. In every howl that echoed through the northern winds, in every untamed mountain, in every soul that refuses to be shackled. Fenrir's tale is not one of defeat, it is a tale of defiance, of purpose, of breaking the chains that bind us, whether forged by gods, kings, or fate itself. He was the beast foretold to end the world, but in doing so, he set it free.